Hi, welcome to another episode of the Massachusetts Pirate News. My name's James O'Keefe. I'm captain of the Massachusetts Pirate Party, and I'm joined today by Steve, our first officer. How you doing, Steve?
Pretty good. Good evening, Jamie.
Excellent. So, unfortunately, Joe won't be able to join us today. Um, I hope he and his family are all nice and healthy by tomorrow. So, with that, we'll move on to the topics that we have here. But first, just going to point out in the description, we have a conference coming up on May 13th, and we will be up in Lowell. So we'd hope we'd love it if you would join us. We're looking for folks who have issues that they want to bring up and discuss, as well as we'll also have a picnic. So it'll probably be at least 2 hours. Starting at noon. We'd love it if you join us, and it's in Lowell, so it's not immediately near public transit, unfortunately. But we can go and pick people up off the commuter rail. I know some of our members are going to probably take the commuter rail and then bike the rest of the way. If you want, to join in that endeavor, you're certainly welcome to. Or people can carpool. If you can give rides, we have a registration page and we ask those questions. So if you need a ride, can give a ride. Want to take the train and have someone pick you up, just, tell us. So with that, of the many things that happened in the last week or two, one of the topics that came up is that TikTok went before a U.S. congressional hearing. Do you have an update on that, Steve? You want to share?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So TikTok's CEO went before a hearing with the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And the committee was, they were interested in understanding how Congress can safeguard American data privacy and protect children from online harms. And they were also concerned about what their belief that TikTok was working in conjunction with the Chinese government and Chinese intelligence agencies. So most of the summaries that I've read of this make it sound like it was, I think theatrics possibly played a big role where, politicians and committee members were more interested in scoring sound bites than, doing any, digging up any legitimate amount of information on the issue. But one of the things that's sort of amusing is, from TikTok's point of view, if they could answer, and from what I understand, the CEO did answer a number of cases, we basically apply the same approaches that, other social media companies do, which of course is terrible, but it does, but, in the context of a congressional agency, it makes it hard to, kind of single anyone out. I mean, TikTok has done, what's sort of the unusual thing of, geographically separating US data. So if you are a TikTok user in the US, the company has an effort called Project Texas. They basically partnered with Oracle to provide data storage and management services. So if you're an American, your data stays in the continental United States, and all access to those facilities are by personnel who live in the United States. As opposed to American social media companies who will host your data wherever. It is a little interesting that, the CEO, I believe he's Singaporean, and, East Asia has better privacy, in my opinion, better privacy regulations than the United States. And, if you're doing business, say in Indonesia, you have to make sure that all data regarding Indonesian citizens stays in data centers in Indonesia. And that's kind of what's going on here. One of the things I think this highlights more than, a lot than anything else is that, in a sense, Congress, might rightfully be a little bent out of shape about the way data is harvested and sold and the way algorithms are used to psychologically influence people, yada, yada, yada. But again, everybody does this. There is nothing unique at all to TikTok about this. And I understand that, they are concerned about, well, maybe Chinese nationals could be trying to influence American policy. Again, this happens on every social media platform. There were Russian actors trying to sway popular opinion in 2016. There were Iranian actors trying to sway popular opinion in 2020, the 2016 and 2020, 2016 and 2020 elections. That's what I'm trying to say. But it just seems like there's not a lot of there. I was talking to someone yesterday who's kid, a teenager who's likes TikTok and was watching some of the congressional hearings and was absolutely outraged at what they were seeing. It does, I think it does go to show you that, our legislators are bright people, they're generalists, but you really don't necessarily have a good understanding about how tech works. And younger generations, they understand the stuff. It's more important to them. And, I think if you want to get a lot of people out to vote, just ban a platform that's used by millions and millions of them, and you'll probably find some motivation. I don't know. What do you think, Jamie?
It was interesting. I talked with my son about this earlier, and he pointed out that TikTok in the 2020 election, or maybe the 2022 election, any errors are of course mine and not my son's. They did have a concerted get out the vote effort, and it wasn't partisan. It was simply a way of, if you are 18 and you are eligible, you should go and vote. And another more important thing is that, I mean, people who are teens or in their 20s are not necessarily on Facebook. They may not necessarily be on Twitter. They could be on Instagram. They could be on Snapchat. They could be on TikTok. They can be on any number of other, social networks. But within those, there are communities of people who have found one another. And that's
absolutely.
The beauty of the internet, is that it allows people in far-flung places to find other people like them. And that can be good. If they're trans, then being able to find other people like you when you're in a community that is not favorable towards trans people is a good thing. If they're Nazis, not a good thing. But at the same time, if TikTok goes away, then those communities, maybe they'll find one another on other platforms, whether corporate or not. My suggestion might be, say, Mastodon, for example. But that's going to be up to them to figure out, and it would be a far sight better if they could just willingly choose to move somewhere else without the government banning one particular platform. I mean, literally, I don't think I think you can get to the Russian social networks. I don't think those are banned. Why ban China?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've admitted I haven't searched the fine web using Yandex in a while, but you can do it. What was, although, yeah, I'm interestingly enough, like TikTok, my understanding is that TikTok, as you see it in the United States, is not available that way in China. There is like a separate Chinese version of it. Mm-hmm. We understand that the government would like them to do content moderation, which is, this is another tricky thing. And, what happens?
Who would like them to do content moderation? Can you be clear about?
There specifically, there were a few Republican, I believe it was a
Okay.
few Republican members of
Okay.
the House, committee that was conducting the hearings.
Because
Um,
literally China itself does a huge amount of content
Content moderation.
moderation.
So yeah, there were just like, there were, I guess you have these, these little crazes where, if things get popular on TikTok, but it's also something that where you could end up injuring or harming yourself.
Right.
But what has happened to American companies that have tried to do content moderation in um, the name of national security? Well, there are, immediately there. Well, what happens if you block, you know, domestic terrorist content in the United States? Then, one of the parties is likely to, cry censorship.
Right.
There's this.
And they wouldn't necessarily be wrong
Mhm.
if the government does it.
Yeah, yeah. And, none of these things are really, simple, but the overall, when it really comes down to the road, if you want to just focus on data privacy and data collection and who has access to it, the US we've got nothing. The Europeans have GDPR, which is a fairly rigorous regime for providing data disclosure and et cetera. US not so much. And this is again, I think this was something that was kind of on display during the hearings this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know TikTok has misused its data, that they were looking at various journalists who they felt, if I recall correctly, felt were not favorable towards them. That's a clear problem. It isn't clear whether China gets data of users' behaviors and things like
Mhm.
that. But literally, you can go to Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or wherever and get that information as well. You just run it through some shell company somewhere and pay the
Yeah.
money and you'll get it.
Yeah.
Right.
So yes, although there are protections of, against government surveillance and, with a big national security loophole, there's basically no restriction on purchasing, the same data from data aggregators, at least as far as I know.
And we see that happen in the United States, where police will do end runs around requiring a warrant by going to some of these data brokers and getting location data, for example, about someone.
Oh yeah.
And as you pointed out, we have our own issues here with our own companies ratting us out where the heck we're going. So why don't we just have protections across the board for Americans, or for at least people in the United States, which would be even better?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I don't remember the name of the license plate reader vendor, but there have been ALPR vendors that will sell or lease systems to police departments, but they are the ones with the data custody. And it's kind of, they're collecting the data, they're keeping it. And, in some case, I want to say that it was at least one case where, this data was claimed to be free from, say, public record requests, um, because it's, held by a third party. They could also be really obnoxious and, charge the same office or the same agencies for access to the data that they basically oversaw the collection of. But yeah, there's a lot we are not doing.
yeah, I mean, so just an aside of governments getting data that they shouldn't. There's a report out from the Espler project, which I found out about from Doug Henwood's Behind the News on, I think it's KPFK in California, one of the Pacifica stations. called "How the War on Sex Work is Stripping Your Privacy Rights" report. We'll put a link in the description. But there's some, you can go after any marginalized community and direct your attacks at them, and then broaden it to larger numbers of people. And it's, we've been seeing this with FOSTA and SESTA as well. But anyways, that's another report. And there's lots of data that they have. We need data privacy for everyone in the US.
Yeah, what's really unfortunate about some of the way these efforts are framed is that they really rely on there being a double standard. So it's like we have to go after sex workers, we have to go after this, we have to go after that.
To protect them, we need to protect them, right? That's always the excuse.
Protecting children, whatever. But it
Yeah.
basically means, the hidden part, the one part about that is this is one of these policies that, yes, you're saying you're targeting a small group or protecting a small group, but what invariably happens is it's applied uniformly, or you don't have enough information, dude. It ends up being applied uniformly, even if for the only reason is that you don't have the ability to judge whether a specific individual is in this class or that class at the time you're collecting the data. So you collect it anyway.
Right. So the other issue that we wanted to touch upon was let's see here. So we now have a decision in Hatchett versus the Internet Archive. For those of you who don't know, the Internet Archive, archive.org, has been a repository of many works that are out there, and is functionally a library for the internet. And various book publishers have banded together to sue them for copyright infringement, would be what I would expect. And indeed, as Cory Doctorow has pointed out, they, how do I say this? So, ebooks, so, we know with paper books, you buy the paper book as a library, and you can give that out any number of times. It's yours until it falls apart. But ebooks are licensed to libraries, which they cost multiple times the print editions, and then they self-destruct after sometimes a few lend-outs. So that's just a constant stream of money that goes to libraries. And literally the marginal cost for an ebook is zero. And yet these publishers, and just like many other industries in the United States, we have a small number of large publishers that control the vast majority of the book market, whether it's Hatchet or Amazon or all these others. And they can go and raise prices and screw over libraries. So the Internet Archive is trying to lend out books in a way that's responsible, but as a library.
Yeah, my understanding was this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was this whole suit got started because during the pandemic, the Internet Archive, had scanned copies of paper books and was, basically lending them out in the manner you described, and not and with a longer lending period than one would usually borrow a book for.
I think that is certainly, it came about when we were all, or not all, but when many of us were locked away in our homes, trying to socially distance from other people, to avoid the worst pandemic we've had since, well, maybe the Spanish flu,
Yeah, the
polio, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah, I mean they were doing a good thing
Hmm.
in making in making books available to people. And the book publishers, they want to make sure they extract as much money from people as they possibly can. Um,
There's a section in the book No Safe Harbor that sort of traces the history of copyright and how it's, and what has happened each time there are new technologies, or or just changes in the way people can read or listen to stuff. Free libraries, well, you know they were they were criticized. On the publishers hated them, on the theory that, well, if someone can borrow a book from the library, no one will ever buy a book again, and if no one ever buys a book, no one will ever write a book again. This has clearly not happened. um, Records, which through the sound recordings throughout the 20th century in particular, were a very important form of revenue for artists. But the music publishing industry, when not music, but one of the subsection of the music industry, was very opposed to sound recordings when they first came out. The idea being that, well, if someone can listen to a recording, no one will ever go to see music again, and all these musicians won't be able to make a living. Granted, making a living as a musician is pretty damn difficult as it is.
you
Um,
would know.
I would know. And there are still people are still playing, people are still gigging, people are still writing and still performing. Um, I think um, the I a lot of these series try to make the transition from one to infinity, um, in unrealistic ways. My 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the copyright monopolists have used all of these additional rights, the copyright um, changes, whether it's lengthening the term of copyright or whether it's saying everything is copyright. Everything is automatically copywritten and you don't have to actually register for it. Sound recordings, all of these changes have ultimately served not to help the creators, but to help the middle men, the book publishers, the record companies, the movie studios. Ultimately, they're the ones who get the benefit from it. And so, every time these things change, it's just more money in yet more concentrated industries, and yet and as a percentage of the revenue, even less for the creators. So, various writers have opposed this suit, where the ruling came out against the Internet Archive. Of course, they're going to appeal it,
That's good.
but sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, I'm glad to hear they're appealing it, but please continue.
Yeah, I mean, and this fight will go to the Supreme Court. We hope that the circuit court will vote in will decide in favor of the Internet Archive, and if that likely that would still then go to the Supreme Court, which should likewise not support wealthy agglomerated corporations, but should support libraries and the ability of libraries to lend out their books. I mean, we don't have the Library of Alexandria anymore. Between um, you know, between just people invading it, Romans accidentally burning it, or Christians replacing various texts they didn't like anymore with texts that were more of their Christian faith. We don't have that anymore. And that's functionally, I believe we've lost 90% of the ancient Greek text and 99% of the ancient Roman text. That's a lot of history. That's a lot of knowledge that we've lost. And so we have sites like the Internet Archive that make sure that that knowledge doesn't disappear. And so, we need them to exist, and we need people to be able to archive things for future generations, because literally we've lost many silent movies, for example, because they were on film stock that just rotted away because there was no incentive to reshoot them on newer film stock, or even now to digitize them now that we have the ability. And so we've lost those. We don't have them. That they don't exist anymore. So with that, we hope you appreciated our insights into these issues. If you have any suggestions for us, please put them in the comments or send us an email, info@masspirates.org. And there's a topic you want us to cover. There's a news story you'd like to get our perspective on, or even you have a perspective you'd like to share. Send us an email, contact us, and we'd love to hear from you. You can find us, of course, at masspirates.org. In the link below is information about our conference, as well as how to find us, how to sign up for our email list, and things like that. We're organizing local chapters. I'm working at organizing folks in Somerville. So if that's something that you'd like to do, or if you are interested in being a candidate in upcoming city elections or next year's state or potentially U.S. Congress elections, it's only 2,000 signatures to get on the ballot. And we can show you how. So with that, thank you very much for listening. And we look forward to talking with you next week. Bye, Steve.
Have a good night, Jamie.
You too.